Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're tackling a really significant move from the president's office.
Yeah, it's Executive Order 14172, came out February 26, 2025.
Right. The title is Implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency, Cost Efficiency Initiative. Kind of a mouthful.
It is, but basically it's all about changing how the federal government spends money. A big cost-cutting push.
So our plan today is to, break this down. What's the real goal here? What are the main ways they're trying to achieve it?
Exactly, and why it matters to you, especially if you're someone maybe in that 22-45 age range who wants to see government, well, run efficiently, using tax money wisely.
We're focusing just on the text of the executive order itself. Get straight to the source.
Yep. So let's start with Section 1, the why. What's the stated purpose?
Okay, yeah, it says the goal is, and I'm quoting loosely here, a transformation in federal spending to ensure government spending is transparent and government employees are accountable.
Right. So transparency and accountability, those are the key words right from the start. Making spending clear, making people responsible.
We hear those words a lot, don't we? But this order seems to be trying to put some real actions behind them.
Definitely. And to see how, we need to jump into Section 2, the definitions. Got to know what they mean by certain terms.
Okay, definitions. What are the key ones?
Well, first up is the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, and its administrator.
DOGE, right. This order doesn't spell out their whole job description.
No, it points back to an earlier order, 14 and 158. That set them up. But think of DOGE as like the central hub driving this whole efficiency thing.
Got it. Then there's agency. How broad is that term here?
It covers most federal departments and agencies, the big ones. But interestingly, it doesn't include the executive office of the president.
Okay. So the president's immediate staff are carved out. What about agency head?
That's just the boss, the secretary, administrator, director. And importantly, they can delegate these tasks. They don't have to do it all themselves.
Makes sense. These are huge organizations. But maybe the most crucial definition is covered contracts and grants. This sounds like where the action is.
Absolutely. This is the money they're targeting. It's basically discretionary spending contracts, grants, loans, things like that.
But not all spending, right? There are exceptions.
Big exceptions. It doesn't cover direct payments to people, like Social Security. It also excludes spending on immigration enforcement, law enforcement, military, public safety, intelligence stuff.
Okay, quite a list.
Yeah, and also agency heads can exclude other critical or emergency spending, but they have to tell their DOGE team lead.
Ah, the DOGE team lead. So each agency gets one of these.
Seems like it. They're the point person inside each agency to make sure this stuff actually happens.
All right, so we know the why and the what. Let's get into the how.
Yep.
Section 3, the core mechanisms for cutting costs. First up is contract and grant justification.
Right. This is about knowing why money is being spent. Each agency head needs to set up a tech system, like a central database.
To track every payment under these covered contracts and grants.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. For every single payment, the employee who approves it has to put in a short written justification right into the system.
Wow. Every payment.
Every single one. And the agency head can even pause payments if there's no justification logged.
So no more just rubber stamping.
That seems to be the idea. And the plan is to eventually require this justification before the approval, not just after the payment.
A shift from recording to pre-justifying.
Precisely. And potentially, these justifications could become public information.
Really?
Yeah, it says to the maximum extent permitted by law and deemed practicable. Imagine you could potentially look up why a specific government payment was made.
That would be a huge step for transparency. Okay, what's next in Section 3? Review of covered contracts and grants.
This is looking back at everything that's already in place. Agency heads have to review all existing covered contracts and grants.
All of them. And do what?
They need to see if they can terminate them or renegotiate them, basically, change them to save money, or redirect funds towards efficiency or the administration's priorities.
And the timeline for this review.
Get this, within 30 days of the order.
30 days to review all existing contracts and grants across the government. That sounds ambitious.
Extremely ambitious. And they specifically call out reviewing funds going to educational institutions and foreign entities for waste, fraud, and abuse.
So a specific focus there. Okay, after that massive review, there's a contract and grant process review. What's this about?
This is looking inward. How does the agency actually handle contracts and grants? What are the policies, the procedures? Who are the people involved?
Another review, also 30 days.
Also 30 days. And while this review is going on, there's a temporary freeze on issuing new contracting officer warrants.
Warrants. What are those exactly?
Wow. They're basically the license for an employee to sign contracts for the government. So they're pausing the creation of new contract signers while they review the whole process, unless the agency head says it's absolutely necessary.
Okay, a pause to check the system. Makes sense. So after all these reviews, what happens with approving new contracts? That's Section 3rd, covered contract and grant approval.
Right. After the reviews, agency heads have to issue new guidance on signing contracts, focused on efficiency and administration policy.
But what about in the meantime? Can they sign anything?
Yes, there's flexibility. The agency head can approve new contracts case by case before the new guidance is out. And the DOGE team leads have to start sending monthly reports to the main DOGE administrator about all this contracting activity.
Including those payment justifications once that system is running.
Exactly. It sets up an ongoing monitoring system.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Section 3E tackles non-essential travel justification. Government travel is always a hot topic.
It is. And similar to contracts, they need a tech system to track approvals for travel to conferences and other non-essential trips.
And again, justification required.
Yep. No travel without a brief written justification from the approver logged in the system. And these justifications also get reported monthly by the DOGE team lead.
And could potentially become public, too.
That's the plan, unless there's a legal reason not to, or the agency head grants an exemption. So more sunlight on travel spending.
Interesting. Next up is something that sounds pretty drastic. Credit card freeze. Section 3.
Yeah, this one likely got people's attention. For 30 days right after the order, a freeze on all agency employee credit cards.
All of them. Any exceptions?
Yeah, definitely exceptions for disaster relief, critical services. And agency heads can make other exceptions, individual or categorical, but they need to talk to their DOGE team lead first.
Still, a 30-day freeze. That's a strong signal.
It sends a message, for sure. A quick way to try and curb that kind of spending immediately, even if temporarily.
All right, the last part of Section 3 is real property disposition. This is about buildings and land the government owns or leases.
Correct. 3 parts here. First, within 7 days, agency heads had to make sure their property inventory list was accurate.
Okay, step 1, know what you have.
Step 2, within 30 days, look at leases on government-owned property. Do they have the right to end the lease early? Should they? They need to figure that out. Consulting with their DOGE lead and the GSA, that's the General Services Administration, the government's landlord, essentially.
And step 3.
Within 60 days, the GSA has to give a plan to OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, for selling off or otherwise disposing of government property that agencies have said they don't need anymore.
So, a push to get rid of unneeded federal real estate seems logical.
It's trying to optimize assets, potentially save on maintenance, upkeep, or even generate revenue from sales.
Okay, so that covers the main actions in Section 3. But Section 4 lists general exclusions, right? We touched on some, but let's recap what this order doesn't apply to.
Right. It excludes law enforcement officers and contracts grants tied to enforcing federal criminal or immigration law.
CBP and ICE are specifically mentioned as excluded too.
Yes. Also, the uniformed services, the military. Anything the agency head exempts in writing after consulting with the DOGE team lead and OMB director, and of course classified information and systems.
That's still a significant chunk of government activity and spending carved out.
It is. It raises the question of how much impact the initiative can have if these major areas aren't subject to the same rules. Maybe focusing the effort where it's perceived as easier or less sensitive.
Food for thought. And finally, Section 5 has the general provisions, the legal boilerplate.
Pretty much. It says the order doesn't mess with existing legal powers of agencies or OMB. Implementation depends on the law and available money. And crucially, it states this order doesn't create any rights that someone can sue the government over.
Standard stuff for an executive order, making it an internal directive.
Exactly. It's about how the executive branch manages itself.
Okay, so let's try to sum this up. This executive order driving the Department of Government Efficiency Initiative, is really pushing for more transparency and accountability in federal spending.
Yeah, especially hitting hard on contracts, grants, travel, credit cards, even real estate. New systems, new justifications, reviews everywhere.
The goal seems clear. Find savings, cut waste, make sure spending aligns with the administration's goals.
For you, the listener, this is a potentially major shift in how government operates financially. The intent is definitely there to scrutinize spending much more closely.
Whether it works, whether those 30-day deadlines were feasible, how deep the cuts go, that remains to be seen.
Absolutely. It sets a direction, but implementation is everything.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to consider. Given all these measures, the justifications, the reviews, the freezes, what parts of government spending do you think will actually change the most?
And maybe more importantly, what are the potential unintended consequences? Could this efficiency drive inadvertently slow down or hinder important government functions or services while trying to save pennies?
It's that classic balancing act, isn't it? Fiscal responsibility versus effective program delivery. This order definitely puts a heavy thumb on the scale for cost savings.
It certainly does. It will be fascinating to watch how agencies adapt and what the real-world impact turns out to be. Definitely something to keep an eye on.